Okay, so here we go. We are going through the New Testament in a year, and we are now near the end of the Gospel of Matthew. And as such, we are in a chapter that talks about the end of the world as you know it. So let's just jump in and see what Jesus has to say about that. Chapter 24, verse 1. Well, let's give a little background before we even jump in. This is the last week in the life and the ministry of Jesus. It started a few chapters back on Palm Sunday when Jesus comes into the city. He's going back and forth in and out of the city. At the end of the day, he goes out of the city, goes and stays in Bethany where he's resting overnight, sleeping, comes back into the city. So he's back in the city again and he's teaching. He's teaching a lot. He'll be crucified in a few days, but right now he's teaching. And he's in the temple area, and they're heading out of town. And we said before that Jerusalem is on a hill, and so when they leave Jerusalem, they're going to go down a hill into the Kidron Valley, and they're going to come up a hill, and they're going to land on what's called the Mount of Olives. On the top of the Mount of Olives, you would be amazed what they grow up there. They grow olives, and hence its name. So Jesus left the temple. He was walking away from the temple when his disciples came to call attention to the building. Now, these are country boys. They grew up around the Sea of Galilee. They were fishermen. A lot of agriculture there, a lot of flocks, a lot of herds. It's the breadbasket of the country. Jerusalem, not so much so. You get down into Jerusalem, it's cosmopolitan, it's urban, everything is happening there. There's buildings, there's magnificent buildings, there's construction going on all the time. There's construction that's high, built up high. And so they're not used to that. And when they get to the city, they're enamored with it. I like to say, how do you know a tourist when you go to New York City? It's very simple. They're always looking up and they're looking at the skyscrapers. And these guys are looking up at the temple. They're not used to it. And they're amazed by it. They think it's absolutely beautiful. And this is the temple, and the temple representing the worship of God. And they're like, this is magnificent. They're pointing it out to Jesus, thinking that he'll have the same response as them. And Jesus said, do you see all these things? What things? The temple and the beauty of it. He said, truly I tell you that not one stone will be left on another. Every stone will be thrown down. Wow. He talks about the destruction of the temple. That wasn't what they were expecting at all. So they leave town, and as they're sitting on the Mount of Olives, because of course you come out of the city, you go down a very steep hill, you go through the Kidron Valley, you walk up onto the Mount of Olives, and when you get to the top of the Mount of Olives, you're going to sit down because it's a tough climb, it's a tough walk. So they're sitting there, catching their breath, resting before they head into town for the night. And the disciples came up to him privately. And they said, tell us a couple of questions here. When will this happen? What happened? Maybe the destruction of the temple that Jesus is talking about. What will be the sign of your coming? And what will be the sign of the end of the age? So 3 questions. So as we get into this, Jesus is answering 3 questions, and they're going to intertwine. So it's going to be contingent on us to unwrap them. Which one is he talking about here? Is he talking about the destruction of the temple? Is he talking about when he's coming back? What's he talking about? So Jesus answered, and he said, watch out that no one deceives you. Around here, we like to say the nature of deception is that you don't know you're being deceived. Otherwise, it wouldn't be deception. It would be something else. You come to realize you've been being deceived. You're no longer deceived. So you don't know when you're being deceived. And Jesus said, watch out that no one deceives you. Keep your eyes open. A lot of stuff going on. A lot of spiritual stuff going on. A lot of people claiming spiritual things. So be careful. Watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming I'm the Messiah, and will deceive many. There are, in the 20th century, literally hundreds of cults that attribute themselves to Jesus. They use the name of Jesus. Why would they use the name of Jesus? A very powerful name. Use the name of Jesus, you can get a lot done. But not everybody that uses the name of Jesus is representative of Jesus. Jesus said, be careful, this is going to happen. Keep your eyes open. You'll hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you're not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is not to come. So when we hear about wars, rumors of wars, especially now, right now, with some of the things that are going on in the Ukraine and the things that are going on in Russia, the talk of nuclear war. War gets people upset, and that Jesus said, there will be wars, but you don't need to be alarmed. That doesn't mean that it's the end of the world yet. It doesn't mean that Jesus is coming back yet, but it might be close. It might be close. You'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is not yet. Nation will rise against nation. So that would be maybe tribe against tribe, ethnic group against ethnic group. There's always ethnic conflicts going on around the world. Very seldom do you find a year where there's no conflict going on the planet somewhere. It's going to be happening all over the place. And, don't be so alarmed. This is what people do. People fight each other. People fight for territory. People fight for power. People fight for fame. Nation will rise against nation. Kingdom against kingdom. Kingdoms are a little bit different than nations or countries. They're usually like alliances. And right now in the world, there's a lot of alliances. The NATO alliance, and everybody that goes to war now, makes an alliance, gets a bunch of people on their side, and so it's a bunch of nations, a bunch of countries against another one. So Jesus said that's going to happen. Kingdoms are going to rise against kingdoms. And he said there'll be famines, there'll be earthquakes in various places. These are the beginning of birth pangs. Birth pangs meaning the pangs that a pregnant woman has. She's like, I can tell it's getting close. Well, when these things start to happen, they're birth pangs. It's getting close, but it may not be yet. Then you'll be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you'll be hated by all nations because of me. Well, this has happened to believing Christians in the last 2,000 years. They've been persecuted everywhere that they've gone. That we don't get severe persecution in the United States is sort of an enigma. Christians have been persecuted around the planet forever, and will continue to. In China, North Korea, Iran, some of these places, it's illegal to be a Christian, and should you convert, you can face death, and the convert can face death, and the person who converted him can face death. So it's not an unusual thing. But thankfully, we live in a free country, at least for now. At that time, many will turn away from the faith, and they'll betray each other and hate each other. So people will turn from the faith. Right now, a lot of people are turning to the faith. Maybe you're turning to the faith. Maybe that's why you're watching this, because you are turning to the faith. Many false prophets will appear and deceive many. People will arise telling you all kinds of things. Be careful. Don't listen to every voice that's out there. Just don't. Put it through the sieve of discernment and prayer, and ask God, is this something I should be participating in? Here's a wild verse giving us some clues of what it might be like in the days preceding the return of Jesus Christ, which will basically be the end of the world as we know it. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. That Greek word there is agape love. It means unconditional love. And it's saying that as wickedness increases, love will decrease. As wickedness increases, love will decrease. Well, this has happened all over the planet forever, throughout history. But when you see it globally, when globally you see wickedness rising everywhere, you're going to see love growing cold. Wickedness getting hot, love growing cold. What an awful world to live in, when wickedness is ruling and love is growing cold. Watch out for that day. Are we approaching that day? Some think so. I'm one of those who thinks maybe so, that I'm not sure there's been a time on the planet, now with the talk of globalization, where we really are sort of becoming one. What happens if as one we become wicked? Wow. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, not of all. So you and I, let's keep loving. Let's love more rather than less. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. Stay steady. Keep your faith. Keep the faith, brother. And the gospel of this kingdom will be preached to the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. This message is going to go out through all of the earth, And then it says in verse 15, when you see the abomination in the holy place that causes desolation, spoken of by the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand that's the prophet Daniel had spoken while he was in Babylon. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one go to the housetop and take anything out of the roof. You know, they use the rooftop as another room in the ancient Middle East. He's talking about a day where a character in the Bible who's called the Antichrist will go into the temple. There will be a rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. And there are people who are working on the rebuilt temple right now. They've got all of the things that they need to rebuild that temple. They're just waiting for the right circumstances to build it. It's saying that a day will come when in this temple in Jerusalem, this man known as the Antichrist, the one who's against everything, the one who's against Jesus, the one who will declare himself to be God. He will declare himself to be the God of gods and the Lord of lords, king over everything, Lord over everything. And he will go into the temple and he will demand worship from the entire planet. And it says that he'll put a mark on people, and the mark 666, and you won't be able to buy or sell unless you have this mark. And what does that mark represent? What is it? You know, what will it look like? But this man is known as the Antichrist. And so we can't read the rest of the chapter, but read it through and then read it through again. And as we get into Luke and the other Gospels, we'll be back to this topic and we'll pick up the parts that we missed in chapter 24. So bless you guys. Love you. Hope you're having a good time going through the scriptures. We're almost through with Matthew. That's a great accomplishment.